Stay close, even when you're far apart. Send money worldwide with Remitly.
No child should suffer the torture of trachoma, but so many are in pain right now. Nananga's lashes have turned inwards. They rip and tear away at his eyes. Pomelo's sight could be gone forever. He's just 3 years old. Kofanga screams for his mother. His eyes are so infected that he can't even see her. For so many children in the world's poorest countries, trachoma is torture. It's a painful infection often spread by flies, and it's destroying children's eyesight.
50% tariff on India on oil. They're the second largest. They're very close to China in terms of the purchase of oil from Russia.
If you do reach a deal with Ukraine and Russia, would you drop the additional tariffs on India?
Well, we'll determine that later, but right now they're paying a 50% tariff. Okay.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance, buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours, so let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions
you're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions.
Trump has also suggested that China could be the next target of steep new tariffs similar to those just imposed on India. Now, while China has been given the 90-day window when asked whether Beijing could face penalties for importing Russian oil, Trump said, and I quote here, "Could happen, depends on how we do it." Now, he warned reporters to expect a lot more secondary sanctions aimed at pressuring countries that continue energy trade with Russia. Meanwhile, China was not named in the executive order that doubled tariffs on Indian goods. The Treasury has already cautioned Beijing about possible economic consequences. Trump's comments further raise the stakes for the US-China trade ties, with fresh tariffs and sanctions once again looming large. Here's more.
China facing potential secondary sanctions for Russian oil. Then having that tariff or sanction rather or not hinges on what going forward?
It may happen. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you yet, but we did it with India. We're doing it probably with a couple of others. One of them could be China.
Shifting our focus to the Far East, where National Security Advisor Ajit Doval is in fact in Moscow to discuss India-Russia defense and security cooperation, as well as India's purchases of Russian oil. Reports suggest Doval is also likely to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. Staying with Russia, Trump also plans to meet Russian President Putin as early as next week and follow it up with a three-way meeting that in fact includes Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as well. Now, without any European leaders present, mind you. Now, the planned meetings came to light during a phone call Trump held on Wednesday with several European leaders. He reportedly told leaders that he plans to meet Putin soon and hopes to bring Zelensky into a follow-up meeting shortly after. Meanwhile, listen into what the US president had to say.
Well, there's a very good prospect that they will, and we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today, and there's a very good chance that we could be ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
Against the backdrop of growing uncertainty in India-US ties, PM Modi is expected to reach out to East Asia in the coming weeks. The Prime Minister will visit China for the first time in over 6 years, in a further sign of a diplomatic thaw with Beijing as tensions with the United States are on the rise. Modi will go to China for a summit of the Multilateral Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO, that begins on the 31st of August. In the neighborhood, South Korea and the United States will launch their annual large-scale military exercise this month to bolster readiness against North Korean threats. The allies have said Thursday in a move likely to anger Pyongyang amid a prolonged stalemate in diplomacy. For perspective, around 18,000 South Korean troops will take part in this year's Ulchi Freedom Strike exercises. The American forces in Korea did not disclose the number of participating U.S. troops. Now, this August exercise may trigger an angry reaction from North Korea, which calls the joint drills invasion rehearsals and often uses them as a pretext to dial up military demonstrations and also weapons testings aimed at advancing its nuclear program. Now, doubling down on its nuclear ambitions, North Korea has clearly repeatedly rejected Washington and Seoul's calls to resume diplomacy aimed at widening down its weapons program, which, by the way, for perspective, derailed all the way back in 2019. The North has now made Russia the priority of its foreign policy, sending thousands of troops and large amounts of military equipment to support Moscow's war in Ukraine. Shift our focus back to the United States, where a sergeant shot 5 soldiers Wednesday at one of the country's largest army bases before he was quickly tackled by other Fort Stewart troops, forcing a brief lockdown. Few details were immediately available about what led to this gunfire to begin with. However, officials said the shooter was Sergeant Cornelius Radford. Now, the 28-year-old sergeant who used a personal handgun and not a military firearm. Radford opened fire where he worked, but officials wouldn't speculate about a motive. The injured soldiers, meanwhile, are stable and expected to make a full recovery. Over in Washington, Trump says he's considering ways for the federal government to seize control of Washington. Now, he says crime is ridiculous and the city is quote-unquote unsafe. Trump renewed that idea after an attempted carjacking, in fact, and beating of one of the most prominent members of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, which was formerly, in fact, headed by Elon Musk. Meanwhile, listen into what Trump had to say on this matter.
We're considering it, yeah, because the crime is ridiculous. I could show you a chart comparing D.C. to other locations, and you're not going to want to see what it looks like. It was just up on television, actually, they were showing it. Now, we want to have a great, safe capital, and we're going to have it. And that includes cleanliness, and it includes other things. We have a capital that's very unsafe. We're going to beautify the city. We're going to make it beautiful. And what a shame. The rate of crime, the rate of muggings, killings, and everything else, we're not going to let it. And that includes bringing in the National Guard, maybe very quickly, too.
The crash of a military helicopter in Ghana on Wednesday killed all 8 people aboard, including the West African country's defense and environment ministers and other top officials as well. The Ghanaian military has in fact said that the helicopter took off in the morning from capital Accra and was heading northwest towards the gold mining area of Obuasi when it went off the radar. Over in Europe, a wildfire larger than the size of Paris has engulfed southern France's Aude region, killing 1 and injuring at least 13 others. Now, the fire broke out Tuesday in the village of Ribote and has since consumed over 16,000 hectares. Authorities, meanwhile, say the fire remains quote-unquote very active and, in fact, continues to spread as night falls. Over 2,100 firefighters and aerial support teams are battling the inferno under severe weather conditions as we get you this update. Now, the affected region, known for its wineries and rural landscape, is grappling with a disaster described by French Prime Minister François Bayrou as unprecedented. Parts of the Great Barrier Reef have suffered the largest annual decline in coral cover since records began nearly 40 years ago. Northern and southern branches of the sprawling Australian reef both suffered their most widespread coral bleaching, the Australian Institute of Marine Science has found. Reefs have been battered in recent months by tropical cyclones and also outbreaks of a crown of thorns starfish that feast on corals. But heat stress driven by climate change is the predominant reason, the university has said. Meanwhile, the study has also warned that habitats may reach a tipping point where the coral cannot recover fast enough between catastrophic events and faces a volatile future. Life in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii did not end with the volcanic eruption of the 79 AD. New data and traces uncovered during the restoration work on the Insula Meridionalis, the southern district of Pompeii's center, shows that the city was reoccupied after the eruption, presumably by survivors who returned and by people coming in from other places as well. This new human settlement existed in a disorganized and a precarious state until the 5th century AD, when Pompeii was finally abandoned. These hypotheses have already been advanced in the past, but now seem to be confirmed, in fact, by the data that emerged during the work on safety measures, restoration and consolidation of the Insula Meridionalis in Pompeii, published in the e-journal of the Pompeii excavations. As time we step into a short break, there's much more lined up on the other side. Stay tuned.
Sometimes it's the little things that remind us of them. Stay close, even when you're far apart. Send money worldwide with Remitly.
No child should suffer the torture of trachoma. But so many are in pain right now. Nananga's lashes have turned inwards. They rip and tear away at his eyes. Pomelo's sight could be gone forever. He's just 3 years old. Kofanga screams for his mother. His eyes are so infected that he can't even see her. For so many children in the world's poorest countries, trachoma is torture. It's a painful infection often spread by flies, and it's destroying children's eyesight. But it could be stopped if you help today. By calling 0800 038 4926 and giving £1 a week to Sightsavers, you can help make sure children get the treatment they desperately need. You'll help us bring them the medicines and the care that can treat infections. And that means you'll be helping to save children from the torture of trachoma and a life of blindness. Please help us reach them. Call 0800 038 4926. Text C13 to 82727 or go online and give just £1 a week now. Because we need you to help save the sight of children like Nananga. We need you to help save them from the torture of trachoma.
Just because my kids are growing up and have little ones of their own doesn't mean family life slows down. I'm busier than ever. Now that I'm in my 60s, I want to make sure that my family has enough to cover my funeral costs and other expenses when I'm no longer around. That's why I decided to learn more about over 50s life insurance from Cover Today. They're the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period. Unlike other insurers who could make you wait up to 2 years, with Cover Today, you're fully covered from day one, and you're covered for the whole of your life. Plus, unlike other things in life, the price never goes up. Learning more couldn't be simpler. Go online or talk to their friendly UK team in just one phone call.
Cover Today are the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period and no annoying trips to the doctors either.
Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Now I'm with Cover Today, I can get on with something much more interesting.
To get a free life insurance quote, call our friendly UK team on 0800 542 1545 or visit covertoday.co.uk.
Welcome back. You're watching The World Report. And now we shift our focus to the world of business, where Apple will invest an additional $100 billion in US manufacturing, Donald Trump has announced alongside the tech giant's CEO Tim Cook. Now, the latest corporate move, rather, to placate Washington in the face of tariff threats, follows Apple's $500 billion pledge just earlier this year when Trump came into power. Meanwhile, listen to Trump and Tim Cook, followed by a report.
Today, Apple is announcing that it will invest $600 billion, that's with a B, in the United States over the next 4 years. That's $100 billion more than they were originally going to invest. And this is the largest investment Apple has ever made in America and anywhere else. And it's just an honor to have you. As you know, Apple's been an investor in other countries a little bit. I won't say which ones, but a couple. And they're coming They're coming home. $600 billion. It's the biggest there is. The company is also unveiling its ambitious new American manufacturing program, which will bring factories and assembly lines across our country all roaring to life.
Earlier this year, we made our largest ever spending commitment, $500 billion to the U.S. over the next 4 years. That's already yielding results. Earlier this year, we broke ground on a new factory in Houston to make advanced AI servers. And just last month, the very first test unit rolled off that factory's line, proudly made in America. President Trump shared some kind words about that work, but he also asked us to think about what more we could commit to doing. And Mr. President, we took that challenge very seriously. I'm glad to be here with you today, and I'm very proud to say that today we're committing an additional $100 billion to the United States, bringing our total U.S. investment to $600 billion over the next 4 years.
Meanwhile, NDTV correspondent Tony Waterman gets you the latest from Ground Zero, Washington. Take a look.
During a press event with Apple CEO Tim Cook in the White House Oval Office. Cook was there to announce that the tech giant is upping its manufacturing investment in the U.S. to $600 billion. Some of that money going towards opening a factory in Texas. Apple is also launching a new program to bring more of its supply chain and advanced manufacturing to the United States. But Apple came up short on one big demand from the president. He really wants Apple to start making its iPhones in the United States, something that Apple is not quite committed to yet. And for now, it seems that it will continue to manufacture its iPhones in India, China, and Vietnam. This investment in the U.S. seems more about avoiding Trump's tariffs as much as possible and also about getting on Trump's good side. Tony Waterman, NDTV, Washington.
And days after the United States slapped Canada with 35% tariffs, raising it from the previous 25%, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Tuesday said that he will in fact speak with US President Donald Trump when it makes sense, in his words. Now, the increased tariff, which the White House said was the result of Canada's continued inaction and retaliation, comes after Trump told reporters that Mark Carney in fact reached out ahead of an August 1st tariff deadline. However, no conversation between the two took place. Meanwhile, my colleague Maha Siddiqui gets you the latest from Vancouver in Canada.
A 35% tariff is in effect for the Canadian market as well from the Trump administration side. However, the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is in no rush to seal a trade deal with the United States. The belief is that a no deal is better than a bad deal for Canada. And here's why. The 35% tariff will apply only to non-CUSMA compliant goods. CUSMA is the trade agreement rather, between US, Canada and Mexico. As per Canadian estimates, nearly 90% of their goods that are exported to the United States are compliant with CUSMA. That leaves around 10% goods, and experts believe that they can be made CUSMA compliant as well. There are three major sectors that have been hit by the Trump tariffs. Those are aluminum and steel, where there is a tariff of 50%, the automobile industry, a tariff of 25%, the energy sector with a tariff of 10%, and lumber as well, which impacts a province like British Columbia. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney was in British Columbia recently, and he also went to Kelowna, which is the hub of the lumber industry, and has announced a support package for the lumber industry. So that really is the plan of the Canadian government, to provide support to these industries where there could be potential job losses because of the tariff and which could suffer because of the Trump administration's decision. They're also trying to bring down interprovincial barriers that will enhance the trade between east to west, that is within the provinces in Canada, and reduce its dependence on north-south trade between Canada and the United States. It's also looking at diversifying its export markets and, in the meanwhile, providing support to the industry that are impacted at the moment. In Vancouver, this is Maha Siddiqui for NDTV.
Some technology news where Instagram has rolled out a wave of new features worldwide, and many of them, mind you, are drawing comparisons to rival apps like the TikToks and the Snapchats. Now, among these updates are the Instagram map, reposts, and a new Friends tab in the Reels section. But not everyone is impressed by this array of changes Instagram has just made. Critics on social media are accusing the platform of simply copying TikTok's playbook. One of the standout additions, mind you, the new Instagram map closely mirrors Snapchat's Snap Map. However, there are some notable differences in how it works by letting its users share their current location and also discover content based on where they are. In the world of sports, South Korean forward Song Heung-min said he is here to win after he joined the Los Angeles FC for a record Major League Soccer transfer fee, ending a decade-long stint at UK's Tottenham Hotspurs. Now, Son was introduced at LAFC's BMO Stadium on Wednesday, where he was greeted by Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and city officials amid chants and drumming from supporters group 3252. Meanwhile, financial details of the transfer have not been disclosed either by the club, but The Athletic reported that LAFC paid a whopping fee in the region of around $26.5 million for the 33-year-old. Son revealed LAFC was not his initial preference, but credited the club's co-president and general manager John Thorrington with persuading him to in fact make that multi-million-dollar switch. The US Open announced $90 million in prize money will be on offer at this year's final major, marking the largest purse in tennis history. Now, it's up 20% for perspective only from last year in 2024. Top players in the ATP and the WTA have called for a more equitable distribution of revenue at the 4 Grand Slams this year, as those at the top of the game are able to benefit from increased prize money, while players at the lower levels or the lower rungs often struggle. The US Open prize pool is up from $75 million last year, the previous highest ever purse for perspective. Meanwhile, men's and women's singles winners will earn $5 million each, up from $3.6 million last year. Now, Chengdu in southwest China's Sichuan province is set to host the 12th World Games due to kick off Thursday night. Now, the Games, which will run till the 17th of August, mind you, will feature more than 250 events across 60 disciplines in 34 sports, with around 5,000 athletes from 110 countries and regions expected to participate. China is sending a record delegation of 330 athletes to the competition. A set of 10 stamps from the UK's Royal Mail will pay tribute to one of Britain's most influential and enduring comedy troupes, the Monty Python. The main collection of 6 stamps celebrates characters from the Monty Python's Flying Circus, the BBC TV series, the iconic BBC TV series, in fact, which ran all the way between 1969 and 74, with sketches so popular that generations of fans can still recite all their lines. The stamp showcase highlights including the Spanish Inquisition, the Ministry of City Walks, the Lumberjack song, the Dead Parrot sketch, Nudge Nudge, and of course, Spam. Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne return for season 2 of Platonic, playing best friends whose relationship may not be romantic, but it's definitely complicated. They star as Will and Sylvia, two longtime friends navigating the ups and downs of adult life, where their close connection often stirs up trouble in others' relationships. Now, the series comes from the minds of real-life couple Nick Stroller of The Muppets fame and Francesca Del Banco, who co-wrote Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Rogen and Byrne also serve as executive producers. Meanwhile, Rose Byrne opened up about what it's really like filming with a longtime friend and co-star. Take a look.
That's what's so funny about this relationship and sort of ridiculous. And And it was funny going from from Seth and I playing a married couple in Neighbours, which were very sweet and like happily married, and like when you're doing that, when you're performing that, it's like naturally you just are sweeter to each other. And then from playing these friends who were like kind of mean, and I was like, well, Seth's a little bit mean to me, and I was like, I don't know if I like that.
Well, it's a wrap on The World Report this Thursday. Take care and have a wonderful day.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
Welcome to this Thursday edition of the World Report with Arjun Samad Mahindran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. It's past midnight in Washington, but it may be a stormy morning for global trade. US President Donald Trump's tariffs have kicked in. Marking the occasion with late-night post on Truth Social, Trump declared that billions of dollars would in fact start flowing into the United States from countries that, in his view here, have long taken economic advantage of Washington. Now, the new tariffs announced under the executive order titled Further Modifying the Reciprocal Tariff Rates impact nearly 70 countries. Now, tariff rate ranges from 10% all the way to 40%. US President Donald Trump has issued an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on goods from India. Now, this comes days after he issued a threat to New Delhi over its purchase of oil from Russia. Indian goods will now face tariffs up to 50% after Trump's latest move. The White House, meanwhile, said the decision is aimed at strengthening measures taken to undo earlier sanctions against Russia following its actions in Ukraine. The US president had announced a 25% tariff on India last week. Now, in a sharp rebuke to Trump, PM Modi stressed that India will never compromise with the interests of its farmers as well as its fishermen. Now, the PM's remark come after the MEA also condemned the United States' decision to impose additional tariffs, calling the move unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. Listen into what PM Modi and Trump had to say.
साथियों, हमारे लिए अपने किसानों का हित सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है। भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा। और मैं जानता हूं, व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं। मेरे देश के किसानों के लिए, मेरे देश के मछुआरों के लिए, मेरे देश के पशुपालकों के लिए आज भारत तैयार है।
You know, we put a 50% tariff on India on oil. They're the second largest. They're very close to China in terms of the purchase of oil from Russia.
If you do reach a deal with Ukraine and Russia, would you drop the additional tariffs on India?
Well, we'll determine that later, but right now they're paying a 50% tariff. Okay?
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours. So let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions
You're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions.
Trump has